picture this.
Yeah.
You have been searching for months, and you finally found the absolute perfect Vietnamese furniture supplier.
Oh, the dream scenario, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are looking at these beautiful, ready-to-assemble Scandinavian bedroom sets. We're talking clean lines, solid rubber wood construction, and the pricing is incredibly competitive, like $45 a set competitive.
Which is incredible margins. You can practically see them flying off your Shopify store.
Yeah, you've got the targeted ads mapped out in your head, the customers are lining up, and your brand is about to just take off. But then you hit a massive brick wall.
The dreaded acronym.
Right. The factory drops this three-letter acronym on you, MOQ, minimum order quantity. And theirs is set at like 500 units.
Ouch. Yeah, that changes the math completely.
It really does. Because at $45 a set, that is $22,500 up front. And you are a growing brand. You have maybe a $10,000 budget and literally zero inventory.
So suddenly that MOQ isn't just a spreadsheet number.
No, it is an impenetrable wall between your vision and your actual financial reality. And, I mean, most brands just walk away right there.
Yeah, they really do. They assume that these minimum order quantities are fixed rules, like they're carved into stone tablets by these distant factory owners.
Right, like they're just trying to squeeze soaring buyers for upfront cash. It feels like they're holding the keys to the kingdom hostage.
It does feel that way, but for this deep dive, our mission is to completely dismantle that illusion.
Yes, we are pulling from a really comprehensive guide on Vietnamese factory negotiation today.
And we are going to look at the exact economic levers you can pull to negotiate a factory down to a fraction of those standard minimums. Because you need to test products at scale, without bidding your entire company on one shipping container.
Exactly. But to negotiate that number down, we first have to, understand the physical reality on the factory floor. The factory didn't just arbitrarily pick the number 500.
Right, it's not a random guess.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like asking a baker to heat up a massive industrial oven to bake a single chocolate chip cookie.
That is a perfect analogy.
The cost of heating that oven is the same whether you bake one cookie or 1,000 cookies.
Yeah, and in the world of Vietnamese furniture manufacturing, that oven heating cost is actually a massive cascade of upstream minimums.
Upstream minimums. What does that actually look like for the factory?
Well, factories rarely make their own raw materials from scratch. They assemble components. So, say you're designing an upholstered mid-century chair. The factory has to buy that specific fabric from a textile mill.
Okay, makes sense.
But that fabric mill isn't going to spin a custom weave or dye a custom color for one single chair. They require a minimum purchase, often something like, 5,000 meters of fabric.
5,000 meters. Wow. So depending on the chair dimensions, that might be enough material to cover, 200 or 300 finished units.
Exactly. So the factory simply has to set a 300-unit MOQ for you, just to absorb the cost of the raw materials they were mathematically forced to buy.
Right, the minimums just cascade down the supply chain.
And then you add the physical setup costs on the production line itself, calibrating the CNC machines to cut your specific wood dimensions.
Oh, and creating the custom jigs to hold the pieces in place, prepping the finishes.
Right. All of that labor and downtime costs the factory anywhere from $500 to $2,000 per new SKU.
Which is huge.
Yeah. If that machine setup costs $1,000 and the factory only makes 50 cents of profit per unit, they mathematically need you to order 2,000 units just to break even on the time their line was shut down.
So smaller orders just make the per unit cost completely prohibitive for them.
Exactly.
And we haven't even talked about putting this stuff on a boat yet.
Oh, the container economics.
Yeah, they are absolutely brutal right now. Shipping a standard 20-foot container from Vietnam to the U.S. costs between $1,300 and $2,000.
And the shipping line charges that flat rate whether the container is packed to the absolute brim or if it is completely empty.
Right, so by setting a 500-unit MOQ, the factory is just trying to ensure that the massive fixed cost of ocean freight doesn't completely destroy the profit margins of the shipment.
And what's fascinating here is how understanding this completely shifts your mindset. The factory isn't being greedy, they are just rigorously managing risk.
Right, because a 500-unit order generates $22,500.
Yeah?
That makes the overhead worth it.
Yeah, and a 50-unit order for $2,000 simply doesn't cover the baseline costs of turning the factory lights on.
So the factory isn't the enemy, they're just trapped by their own economics.
Exactly.
But, okay, now that we understand their constraints, How does a small brand actually use that knowledge to their advantage? Let's pivot from theory to a real-world application. Let's talk about Nesco.
Yes, the Nesco case study is just a brilliant blueprint for dismantling a factory's risk profile.
So for some context, Nesco is this direct-to-consumer furniture brand based in Portland, and they wanted to test this new, highly minimalist nightstand design.
And they ran into the exact scenario we just painted. The factory demanded a 500-unit MOQ at $45 a unit, 22 grand total.
Which was way too much capital for an untested product.
Yeah.
But the founder, Sarah, didn't walk away.
No, she didn't just ask for a favor either. She brought a detailed sales projection to the table. She basically said, look, if this initial test validates our assumptions, we have the marketing infrastructure to place monthly orders of 500 plus units.
Ah, so she positioned herself as a committed pipeline of future revenue, not a risky one-off buyer.
Exactly. But, promises of future orders don't pay the factory's workers today, so she tackled their cash flow risk next.
Right, because standard payment terms in this industry are usually, what, a 30% deposit up front?
Yeah, 30% up front, and the remaining 70% paid when the goods actually ship and are loaded onto the vessel.
Which takes weeks.
Right, so Sarah completely flipped that. She offered a 50% deposit up front and full payment the very moment production was finished.
Oh, wow. So she didn't make them wait for the container to get loaded on the boat?
Nope. And that faster cash flow significantly reduced the factory's financial exposure.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Her third move. She voluntarily offered to pay a 15% price premium for the test batch.
Yeah, instead of the standard $45, she offered $51.75 a unit.
Purely on the condition that the MOQ be dropped to 200 units.
Right, and she stipulated that once they scale back up to those 500-unit monthly orders, the price would automatically revert back to $45.
So by paying that premium, she directly subsidized their setup costs for the smaller run.
Exactly. The CNC machine calibration, the downtime we talked about, her premium paid for that outright.
And it totally worked. The factory agreed to a 200-unit MOQ.
It's amazing.
Her total upfront cost dropped to just over $10,000, which is a manageable risk for a startup, and they ended up selling 180 units in the very first month at $229 retail.
That is a 53% profit margin.
Yeah, and because the test was a success, they happily placed the 500-unit reorder in month 2 at the original $45 price.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly Sarah aligned her need for lower upfront capital with the factory's need for risk mitigation.
It's a replicable playbook. But wait, I have to push back on that price premium tactic for a second.
Sure, what's the hesitation?
Why would any business owner voluntarily offer to pay 15 to 25% more per unit? Doesn't paying more artificially inflate your unit cost and completely defeat the purpose of going wholesale?
It is a highly counterintuitive move, I admit, but you have to look at it not as a permanent cost increase, but as a temporary bridge.
A bridge?
Yeah, an insurance policy. You pay a 15 to 25% premium on a small batch to achieve a 50 to 75% reduction in your upfront capital requirement.
Ah, I see.
Yes, your margin on that specific test batch shrinks, but it protects your startup capital from being tied up in dead inventory if the product flops.
Okay, that makes total sense. You offset their setup costs while protecting your own capital. So what are the other key levers we can pull from this playbook? We talked about volume commitments, sharing 12-month forecasts.
Right, and pre-orders and even the size of your email list.
Like showing them your ammo. And we covered faster terms, trading the standard 30/70 for a 50/50 model upon production.
Factories will often drop MOQs by 20 to 30% just for earlier cash.
Wow. Okay, what else?
Exclusive distribution. You offer them 12 months of North American exclusivity for your design.
Wait, really? How did that actually help lower the MOQ?
It's a brilliant psychological play. Overseas factories are terrified of IP theft from their own clients. They worry they'll spend weeks perfecting a prototype with you, eating the setup costs, only for you to take that perfected sample to a cheaper competitor down the street for the big production run.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can see why they'd be paranoid about that.
By offering an exclusivity agreement, you lock them in as a partner. It symbolically and legally protects their investment in learning how to make your product.
And another tactic is split shipments, right?
Yes. You agree to order the full 500 units to satisfy their hard requirement, but you take delivery of 200 units now and the remaining 300 units in 60 days.
So you pay a small premium, like 5 to 10%, for them to store those 300 units, but you get to test your cash flow before taking on the entire financial burden.
Exactly. It tests your actual sales velocity. But this raises an important question. Who exactly are you deploying these tactics against?
Right, because strategy changes based on the supplier size.
You can't just walk into a massive conglomerate and demand special treatment.
So who do we avoid? The large exporters.
Yes, large exporters are shipping over 200 containers a month. Don't even bother trying to squeeze them. They simply won't budge below 500 or 1,000 units. Their lines are optimized for continuous runs.
Stopping for your 200-unit test costs them way too much efficiency.
Exactly. You just aren't big enough to matter to them yet.
What about the really small guys, the small workshops?
They might only ship 10 to 50 containers a month. They are incredibly flexible, but there is a massive operational risk. If your product suddenly explodes, they lack the infrastructure to scale rapidly.
So where's the sweet spot?
The mid-tier factory. These guys are shipping 50 to 200 containers a month. They have the infrastructure to scale up, but they are still fiercely hungry for growth.
They are the highly negotiable ones.
Exactly. They might quote a 500-unit MOQ initially, but they're the most willing to drop to 100 or 200 if you deploy the playbook we just discussed. They want long-term partners.
So what does this all mean for someone starting from absolute scratch? We've covered how to negotiate if you have 10 grand. But what if you literally don't have the $10,000 for a Nesco-style test?
If you are entirely bootstrapped, you have to look at the drop shipping to wholesale pipeline.
Drop shipping,
Right.
which has zero MOQ, but the margins compress terribly, right?
Yeah, wholesale gives you maybe a 50% margin, while drop shipping crushes that down to about 22% because the supplier takes all the inventory risk.
But you aren't using drop shipping forever.
No, you use it purely to validate demand. You drop ship for months 1 through 3, take the margin hit, and generate hard sales data.
And then you walk into a mid-tier factory wholesale negotiation and say, I just sold 500 units drop shipping, now I want to do it wholesale.
Exactly. Factories are infinitely more willing to slash their MOQs when you arrive with undeniable proven demand.
But wait, if we are offering a factory 50% upfront cash, how do we know they aren't a bad actor?
Yeah.
There have to be red flags.
Oh, definitely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you need to know when to walk away.
Right. What's the biggest red flag?
A take it or leave it mentality. If they refuse to even entertain a conversation about flexibility, walk away.
Unless they hold a literal patent on a component you need, that rigidity is a bad sign for future hiccups. What about the bait and switch?
Oh, that's a classic. The sales rep enthusiastically agrees to a 200-unit test run, and then the next week the official quote arrives and the MOQ magically jumped to 400.
Which usually means the production floor manager vetoed the rep, showing disastrous internal communication.
Or it's a deliberate psychological trap to get you invested. Either way, cut ties.
And then there's the demand for 100% payment before production begins.
That is a major scam alert. Legitimate factories never demand full payment up front before a single raw material is purchased.
We talked about offering 50% as a tactic, but if they demand 100%, run.
Run fast. Also, watch out for high-pressure tactics. If they say the sale ends tomorrow, they are desperate for cash to meet payroll. Your test order is not their financial bailout.
That is such a crucial point. Okay, let's wrap this up. To beat the MOQ, you need to research standard rates, build a one-page credibility case, your ammo, and propose specific trade-offs like price premiums or faster cash.
And get everything in writing. Position yourself as a future partner.
But before we sign off, there is one final really provocative angle from the guide that we haven't mentioned yet.
Yes, and it's a fascinating operational paradox.
Everything we just discussed focuses on negotiating your orders down to carefully test the market. But what happens if your product suddenly goes viral?
Right. You spend months training your mid-tier factory to expect small, cautious test orders. You've squeezed them on smaller MOQs.
You've conditioned them to operate slowly and leanly.
So how quickly can they realistically pivot when you suddenly call and say, I need 10,000 units by next month?
Oh, wow. Are your careful, risk-averse negotiations today accidentally setting up a massive supply chain bottleneck for tomorrow?
It's a very real possibility. You survive the startup phase, but accidentally train your supply chain to fail when it's time to scale.
That is definitely something for you to seriously mull over as you build out these vendor relationships. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep exploring these tactics.
And remember, the next time you hit that massive MOQ brick wall, it isn't made of stone. It's just a conversation waiting to happen. See you next time.